What's going on, guys? TalkNorwichCity here, back for another video. Today I'm joined with someone who's inspired me a lot, Chris Goreham. How you doing, mate?
Hello, Jack. Yeah, nice to see you.
Yeah, good stuff. The first question is how are you sitting here now? How are you the voice of Norwich?
Well, yeah, I must admit, when I was growing up, I was a huge Norwich fan. I was massive. I went to my first game when I was 4 years old. It happened to be Brian Gunn's debut against Coventry. So my association with Norwich City sort of started at the same time as Gunny's. And then I got a season ticket when I was old enough to appreciate it, 7 or 8 years old, and I was hooked. I was never any good at playing football. I mean, I didn't even get in the school team when I was growing up. Anyone who's ever been unfortunate enough to see me play will tell you it's not pretty. So I realised quite early that if I wanted to get into a position where I could make a living out of football, it was going to have to be doing something like this, writing about it, talking about it. And I watched all the football that I could, listened to a lot of football on the radio. I think when the Premier League first started, I was about 10 years old.
Right.
Sky came in. I didn't have Sky at home, so I relied on the radio commentary to follow top flight football, and maybe somewhere subconsciously that's where the idea set in that I could be a radio football commentator. And I grew up from quite an early age knowing that's what I wanted to do, and was lucky enough to get some work experience here at the BBC, and worked with Roy Waller for a number of years. And when he stepped aside, I was lucky enough to get the job of commentating on Norwich City. So yeah, in many ways it's the job that I always wanted.
Yeah, I mean, you've commentated on hundreds of games now, and amongst other things, I can remember at the Tales from the City night, Simon Thomas called you the voice of Norwich City. Is that a title you're proud to have?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's a strange job in that it doesn't really matter how well you do it, how well we cover Norwich City as a radio station. You know, over the last 10 years, this has been a League One station in terms of its football coverage. It's now a Premier League station, and that's no reflection on the quality of the coverage or the service that we provide. Our futures, our careers, in a way, are completely in the hands of those players on the pitch. When they're playing well, you know, they can take us to Wembley and we get to commentate at Wembley and be there. When they're not doing so well, we can end up being at Yeovil or Carlisle. And it's, again, no reflection on how we're doing the job. It's down to those players on the pitch. So, yes, we're fans, and yes, we have to take a slight step back because we have to be critical. We have to say they're bad when they're bad. But, in our heart of hearts, we want them to do well, because if Norwich City are doing well, then we get the chance to go to some great places as a radio station and tell those stories.
I think you'd probably agree with me with saying one of your most iconic moments in commentary was the Derby game. I know one of my mates for Christmas, or for his birthday, actually got the quote on a poster. Talk me through that day, and I doubt much went through your head. I doubt there was much thinking when Jackson scored the hat trick. But have you listened to it back? Because I know I have hundreds of times.
Yeah, I think inevitably it gets played quite a lot, and it did in the immediate aftermath of it. But it's, in terms of a piece of radio commentary, it's not that good. It's not that descriptive. You don't really know what's going on. It's not clear where the ball is. So it breaks all the rules when it comes to how you're supposed to commentate on football. The one thing that I will say for it is, and I do get embarrassed listening to it, it's not, you know...
You do?
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, because at the time, I've never seen a goal celebrated like it at Carrow Road. A last-minute winner that was the difference between Norwich being second with a couple of games to go or third with a couple of games to go. It was a huge goal, and it came in the last minute. Fantastic. So at the time, yes, that was the right way to react, and that's how everybody reacted. But when you then listen to it in the cold light of day, when you're not at Carrow Road and it hasn't just happened in front of you, it does feel a bit odd. But yeah, I think the one thing it did, the one thing I will say for it, is that it did capture the moment. It captured the mood of everyone at Carrow Road. It was one of the most unbelievable goal celebrations I've ever been part of. So it may have done that, even though it may not tick many boxes in terms of how you're supposed to commentate on football. Yeah,
I mean, obviously, how are you supposed to commentate on football? Because I know my mum always jokes and says you make the most dull game sound exciting on the radio. That must be quite a task sometimes.
Yeah, but again, our job isn't to make games sound exciting. Our job is to say what we can see. It's a bit like the old Roy Walker on Catchphrase. You say what you see. If a game is dull, if it's 0-0, it's okay to have a bit of fun with it and say, oh, this is a terrible game, you know, I could have been Christmas shopping. Actually, you don't get that very often with Norwich. See, there's never a dull moment with Norwich City, we find. And I think it's a difficult thing to describe how you do football commentary, because there aren't that many sort of official training courses for it. It's just something they let you try if you're lucky, and you see whether you can do it. And as you do it more and more, you get better at it. But it's very different from radio and TV. But in radio terms, the key rules are always say where the ball is as much as you can, It's all very well identifying which players are in possession, but the listener's got to know whereabouts on the pitch the ball is. That's a key one. And say the score a lot as well, because not everybody is like you and me, Jack. Not everybody is hanging on to every single second of Norwich City games, and there's nothing more frustrating than if you tune in 10 minutes, 20 minutes into a game and you're trying to pick up and you don't know what the score is. We don't have that benefit of having the score in the top left-hand corner of the screen. So, yeah, that's really as long as you're giving out the score and as long as you're saying whereabouts on the pitch the ball is, then that's more important than getting your stats, your clever stats right, or even identifying the players. You don't always have to identify each player all the time that's got the ball. It's where it is on the pitch, which team has got it, and what's the score. Those are the three key rules that we're sort of told to stick to, and I can understand why.
You say there you don't, well, obviously stats is a key, and I've seen some of your research, the bits of pages you do. What goes into that? Is that a couple of days leading up to it, you start to prepare? Or I know I spoke to Michael Bailey and he said he's always preparing, a couple of months in advance to know what the opposition players are doing and things like that.
You do. You always have an interest in what's happening with football because you're a fan anyway, so a lot of it just seeps in. In terms of hardcore homework for a game, I'd probably spend 2, maybe 3 hours, no more than that, but before each game. I tend to write down the likely starting 11 and then the rest of the squad for each team with a little fact or a little line about each player. Now, you're not going to use every single one of those, but you may need them if something happens in a game. And I'm also trying not to get too bogged down in stats, because I think you look at the way football is covered now, I think there's too much of a reliance on stats, and you watch it on TV now and they can tell you, how much possession someone has had, how far a player has run, how many touches of the ball they've had, and to me none of that is particularly interesting and none of it really matters. It's the score that matters, and actually it's the feel of a game. If you're there and you've at the Everton game, the last game, there was an Everton fan in the crowd who was just wearing a pair of pants with a Santa hat. Now, I would argue that someone listening at home, that's more entertaining and more interesting to them. If you say, look, we're here on a cold day and there's a man just wearing a pair of pants, that's actually more interesting to hear on the radio than how many goals Romelu Lukaku has got in the last month. So I think it's having that feel for it, spotting what is interesting. Yes, putting in the odd little nugget about players, but I think they have to be interesting, and I don't like the trend of just trotting out stats for the sake of it, because I don't think it means anything to a lot of people.
Okay. Obviously all of most of the broadcasts are seamless, but have there been any howlers down the commentary career?
Oh yeah, you get them. It's that kind of job where it's of the moment. You can't write a script beforehand. You have to react to what's in front of you, and there's the odd time where, the worst feeling you get is when a ball goes into the back of the net and you're not quite sure which player it is who's got the last touch. And you just sort of saying Norwich have scored and you're desperately looking around to try and find out if you can work out who scored. That's always a bit of a nervous one. I've had games where I remember one game at Coventry, the Ricoh Arena. It was really windy and that sort of bowl-like ground really holds the wind in. And my notes all blew away and disappeared in a gust of wind, and the steward had to go and get them from the front of the stand. So that was a bit embarrassing.
Always thankful to that steward.
That's when I learned it's a good idea to have some strong sort of like bulldog dogs just to clip your notes down all the time. So you always feel as a commentator as if you're kind of just about getting away with it. I'd liken it to going out to bat for England number 11 in a test match. You always feel the best you can do is just bat out for a draw, because you don't know what's going to happen next. There's always something that you worry could catch you out. There could be, a goal could be disallowed and you're not sure why, or you could say that a goal has been given when it's been disallowed. So that there's always something that's going to catch you out further down the line, and I think you have to remember that all the time.
So I suppose to anyone out there who's wanting to get into a similar career to you, everyone goes down different routes. I believe you didn't go to uni?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't go to uni. I went to City College in Norwich straight from school, and while I was doing that, I was lucky enough to get some work experience here. And I thought, if I go away to university, I'm going to lose what I've got here without that foot in the door. So I think that's always experience. It's a really difficult thing, because employers are always looking for experience. Yet how do you get that if they're already looking for the experience? I think you almost have to go out and just. It sounds a bit silly, but go to a game, and now you can record things on your phone. You can just practice yourself. There's nothing to stop you from going to a game with your phone and commentating on it, even if it's a Norwich reserve game or your school team or something. If you want to be a commentator, try it out and
just do it.
And then have a listen back to yourself. It's especially now you've got the phones that you can record on, which we never had mobile phones when I started, so that's something. But that is just just practice. Even commentate on your mates playing on FIFA. Just get into the feel of it and commentate. See whether you like it. See how you go about it, and listen to yourself and just try it. That's all. That's the only thing you can do, because people always want to. First thing when you apply for a job at somewhere like this, the first thing people want to do is they want to hear you.
Yeah.
So you have to have something to be able to hand in and say, yeah, I've done this and this is what it sounds like. We have Future Radio locally in Norwich. There's hospital radio stations everywhere as well, and they're always looking for volunteers and people who want to get involved. So showing that you've done something without having to get paid for it, you're keen enough to have volunteered to do something, that is never going to count against you.